Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. How are you doing?
Hello there.
How are you, Jason?
I'm not too bad, thanks. And you?
I am doing well this afternoon. Great to see you again.
Yeah.
All right. And I think I'm just going to make myself presenter here. And in the meantime, as all of you come into the room, I'm curious if you don't mind entering into the question area. Oh, you already are. Hello from Vancouver, Mike. Good morning. I'm in Toronto. It is a good spring afternoon. Same thing here, Jay. I'm actually in, well, just outside of Toronto in Barrie, Ontario, and it's just a beautiful day. Howdy from Dallas. Hi from Portland. Great to see everybody. And Cyprus. Oh, that's amazing, Isaac. Great to see you. All right. Hello from LA. Oh, it's great to see where everyone's from. Uh, I'm Nick Haraz. I'm one of the certified trainers here at Maxon/Red Giant, and I'm here with the fabulous Jason. And how long have you been in the production industry, Jason?
Be 31 years this year.
31 years and counting. That's amazing.
Yeah, mainly in broadcast.
Awesome. And we just have a question from Ben coming up here. Ben, these will be available after. And for those of you who have joined us in previous weeks, where we place this recording for our collaboration series with Universe will be on the Maxon Training Team YouTube page. So you can head there. It's usually about a few hours after we finish the recording that we're going to post this up no later than tomorrow. But subscribe here to get access to this recording. You'll also get a follow-up email. With that said, we've been covering Red Giant Universe for the past month, and we're at part 4 today. We're going to be taking a look at some collaborative workflows as well as some of the amazing text features in Universe. And we'll be joined by some of the other people who are missing this week. That's Harry as well as Max. They'll be joining us next week for part 5, same time on Monday next week. I also want to mention that we have a new upcoming demystifying post-production series here. This time it's going to be on Cinema 4D for April, visualizing in Cinema 4D. So you're going to have some fantastic uh, Maxon trainers who are going to be here for that series coming up next month. And don't forget, there's actually 2 certifications that you can take within the Maxon certification realm. Red Giant has specific certifications. You can take a assessment specifically on Universe, which we're covering this month, Trapcode Particular, Magic Bullet, as well as VFX Suite. So you can simply head to this website here to do so. I'll also share with you this link at the end of this training in the follow-up email. And next, you also have a certification specifically with Maxon. You can take an elementary knowledge test, as well as a full-on basic comprehensive certification test with an actual trainer live for 2 to 3 hours to test your knowledge of Cinema 4D. I can't uh, not mention the fact that you can also grab yourself a free t-shirt from the Maxon merchandise store on Shopify. In fact, I'm just going to share that link with everyone right now through the answer section. So there you go. And I believe the code is demystifying03. I'm just going to confirm that and also share that through the question section so that you guys can grab yourself a free t-shirt. And for any reason that that doesn't work, let me know. And without further ado, I think, Jason, you have some stuff to show. And I'm going
I
to try
do.
to share that screen over with you, but also let us know that you can hear us okay and see us okay for the time being, and that we're loud and clear. And let me just find you here in the list. And I'm just pressing OK. You should have a invite now there, Jason.
Cool. I think hopefully you can see my Premiere screen.
I can see
So
just fine. Yep.
excellent. So this week, as Nick said, it's just the 2 of us, and we were going to run through some text tools and some of the capabilities of the text tools in Red Giant Universe. For those, I'm working in Premiere for the moment, just to show you a couple of the text tools. And just a reminder, you can always go to Window Extensions and Red Giant Universe Dashboard, which brings up this really cool little dashboard, which has come up on my other screen for some reason. I'll pop that in here. And this is a great way to get access to all of the different available tools. But as we're focusing on text today, I was just going to run you through some of the basic text tools that come as part of Universe. For me, the big thing about these, I work on Avid as well as Premiere and After Effects. Obviously, After Effects, you can do pretty much anything with some simple scripting or even some of the built-in effects. But as an editor, it's near impossible to do anything cool with text, especially if you're on Avid with the fairly limited type tool. So I'm just going to look at a few of these tools in here in Premiere. So if we're on the text, you can see the tools we're going to look at. So I'll just take you through them and give you a quick outline of what they're all about. So the first one, which we covered in quite some detail last week, so I won't go on it too long about it, is Hacker Text. Hacker Text is basically allows you to transform from one line of text to another. So if I go to Edit Controls and we come in here, you can see if I select the Edit Text, we have source text and target text, and you can see here there's my source. So I'm going to go from Cyrillic words saying Moscow, Russia, through to English words. You can see I can play with the color interactively. If I want to make it white and hit OK, you can see it's instantly become white. And basically, it allows you to animate from one line to another. And in this case, I'm going from source through random to target. So you can see it starts off in Russian. It sort of animates through, which I've got using keyframes. You can also do it automatically, but I like to do everything manually just so I'm in complete control of it. And it's just 2 keyframes then from 0 to 100. And you can see that animates through nicely through to the English. So for example, we could just go source to target. And you can see now it doesn't have all the random characters. I've also got some little flicky animations happening, which you can also control. You can also do sort of, if you don't want the source, you can just go from random to target. So it looks like sort of general computer gobbledygook, which then turns into the words you want. So it's quite flexible. You can add icons and all kinds of, you've got a lot of control. Plus, as is standard with all the Red Giant Universe tools, it comes with a load of presets in different colors and different animation styles. You can see some examples here. So you can instantly apply any of these quite easily. Just hit apply. Instantly, you can see it's gone to that look. The position's slightly different, so we can move that back in. And you can see you can take advantage of all of these presets that were already made for us. So anyway, that's a quick look at Hacker Text. As I say, I won't spend long on that because we did it last week. The next one, Numbers, is particularly useful, especially for editors. It allows you to sort of access a range of numeric values. Like for example, you can see here I've got a simple animation that's counting up a temperature. Again, I'm just using 2 keyframes from 0 to 100. And you can see it's a nice way to go up in Celsius. If I want, I can change all of these values. So at the moment, you can see I'm on degrees Celsius here. If I wanted to change that to Fahrenheit, simply press the button. Or likewise, we can go to yen or euros. You'll notice it's after at the moment, and that's because it's got unit placement is set after. I can simply switch that to smart. Smart means it'll put it in the right place. The euros will be before, Celsius will be after, so it does all that for you. So it's just a great way of having animating numbers, and obviously in Avid, there's no other way of doing that without a plugin, so it's perfect for that sort of thing. And here's another variation. You can use a date, and you can have it go from one date to another date. Likewise, you can use it for time. Of course, the nice thing as well with any of these, you have complete control over the text style. So you can pick any font on your system, including monospace fonts if you don't want it to jiggle about. You can change the color and size and everything else. So it's very editable and a great way to get access to different numbers. The next one we look at is called Screen Text. Screen Text is a great way of sort of simulating a computer display, good for heads-up display type scenarios. And you can see here, I just copied a load of text off the Red Giant website about what Universe is about. And you can see I've controlled things like I've got a little red icon, cursor flashing, which if we go to a frame where you can see it, obviously I can make that any color I want, so I can have a blue cursor instead. Completely editable. Again, you can control the font full font control, type in your information there. It also has a load of standard loads of sort of computer text if you don't want to type in specific text. In fact, if we go to choose a preset, you'll see all of these like crypto miner, hex dump. If you just want sort of generic computer looking text, there you go, you can apply things like that really quickly, which I quite often use that as an element blended into a background, which just creates a bit more depth and makes things look a bit more interesting. But I like this tool because it sort of gives you that scrolling computer typing look, but also the fact that you can put in custom text. The next tool we have, so just going back to so we're working in the text tools here, so we've looked at these three. The next one is textile. And this makes sort of tiles of text, like columns of text that sort of appears. I personally find this one less useful, but obviously everything has different uses. You still got quite a lot of control over color and things. If we look at the presets, there's a range of sort of selections of different types of data that you can access. The only thing here is you can't actually type in your own text. So it's sort of relying on the randomness of whatever's here, which might suit you perfectly, depending on what it is you're doing. And there's glows, and you can do different, still quite a lot of editable controls within the tool, but this is one I don't use as much, but it could be handy if you're doing like a documentary on criminal activity. You can see here all the different crimes that have been committed. Next one, title motion. If we just go and have a look at the presets, this is kind of designed, you can sort of make text that drops in and flies about, flips in. So you can see, again, there's a load of presets to choose from, and even sort of funky shapes. Like good if you're doing sort of an advertorial, like, but wait, there's more. It can also be used to make lower thirds. So you can see here, little things that pop in. And like, for example, I just had a quick play in a couple of minutes and made sort of a funny looking shape just to show that you can sort of play with all kinds of different shapes. And the nice thing about it is that sort of organic sort of bouncing motion that it has. So obviously you could keyframe that quite easily in After Effects, but just to make a quick title, it's very quick and simple in an edit software package. The next one is called Typecast, and this is sort of, if we again go to the presets, so choose a preset. There's always a preset library with every Universe tool, and you can see here there's a load of patterns on how to bring it in. And as is the case with all of these tools, you could sort of play with the color and style. So you can see if I run that through, it's quite quick. And there's a couple of variations. So like obviously this has got giant big red letters forming, but within the same tool, sort of more subtle, common with modern looks of design is just have each word sort of slide in one at a time. Sort of subtle, but again, to do that in an Avid or Premiere without using one of these tools, that would actually, you'd need 3 layers of text and you'd need to keyframe each one. This is done with one simple tool. And then here's another little example, just sort of smearing on, but going through a color as well. So another nice way to bring in text, or you can sort of have text sort of pop on and exaggerate. So it gives you a toolkit of lots of different possibilities. Next one's called Type-On. This is sort of like a mini version of screen text, if you like. It gives you that sort of computer data look of things typing on with a cursor.
Jason, there's actually a really good question here about Type-On, which was about its use inside of After Effects. And what is the best method of kind of blending Type-On with other layers? So in terms of the blend modes that are involved with Type-On, or how you might want to apply that to a layer or to a solid, so to speak.
Yeah, well, you can either, the cool thing about the Universe tools is if let's just move all this along. I'll just put a shot there. You can see I've applied this onto a black video layer. So if we do that first, automatically all the Universe tools have got a blend layer built into them. This has got none in this case, but you can see I can choose different layers. The only warning is sometimes things on an adjustment layer within Premiere works a little bit unusually. So the other thing is we can apply that. So what I'm going to do is let's just copy that tool. So I'll copy that from here and I'll paste it straight onto my shot, which makes it work better. You can see there. And then if we slide that along, this is a nice thing that it's especially powerful in Avid is the fact that you have blend modes built into the tool, so we can sort of add or subtract and find something that works. So there's a load of different blend modes built into the tool. You've also got opacity, so we can actually turn down our background. So we can make the background more subtle and really make it stand out. So you can see within the tool, so that's that text applied just straight onto a background shot. So it's very fast and flexible and gives you a range of sort of different methods where that's sort of a fairly simple cursor typing on a word, which is quite nice for a locator. Like obviously there's not many scenes like that in Moscow, but still it looks cool. You can see here you can do things where there's a dot waiting for a letter to form that the cursor sort of writes on. So again, it's quite configurable. And then here's the same things to type on being used almost like screen. But you'll notice the one big difference is this type on it doesn't scroll. So where the screen text tool made it scroll down the page, this just types on. So you can see once it gets past the bottom of the screen, it's gone off screen. So that's a sort of very quick roundup of the text tools. You'll notice I've skipped one, Typographic, which I'm going to hand over to Nick because he's got a bit of a more in-depth, detailed look at that for you. So I'll hand that over to Nick so he can show you something cool with that one.
And Jason, I actually had a question for you regarding numbers. Do you find yourself, when you compare numbers to Progresso, do you find yourself going to one over the other in terms of when you're using sort of number style animations?
Yeah, well, I would use numbers more for just sort of generic numbers, like if I was building a HUD display or wanted to show a temperature or date or like these examples here. Progresso, the number system in Progresso, I tend to use whenever I'm using Progresso because obviously it's fed from the same engine that makes the graphs. So I tend to use that more for graph data, and plus then you don't need to script anything. So if you want a percentage counting up as a graph opens out, it's all already built into Progresso, so it saves you a lot of extra work.
Cool.
Lovely. I'll just hand that over to you.
All right. I just got that message, and everyone sees my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay. So let me just explain what's going on here. I need to create a title or typographic, and then I need to share it amongst a team. And sometimes in these processes of collaboration, what I use is Frame.io. So I'm going to show you sort of a versioning process with that and look at a few other features of Typographic, because I know that Harry did mention a few things in week one, but it is an incredible tool. And I think that on another note is that some of the type effects, Jason, if you agree, work a little bit differently than you would specifically in Premiere Pro and After Effects. Because in Premiere Pro and After Effects, you have to add a secondary text layer or text clip on top of everything that you're working with. In terms of Typographic and some of the other text tools inside of Red Giant Universe, you could apply these directly on top of the clip, and it actually becomes on top of the clip, which is it's a slightly different workflow than what you might be used to. I think the other advantage spot is that if you're collaborating with someone in any other program, Davinci Resolve, and we've mentioned Final Cut and even Avid, that's where you can share them these text or title assets that go outside of the system of MOGRTs that are both in After Effects and Premiere Pro. Anyhow, let's go into Typographic. And we saw some of the presets in an earlier week that are here. Now, some of these presets, slightly, if I go here to this water title, it's going to update Typographic. And this is something that's interesting in certain universe workflows. If you have multiple renditions of an effect on a clip or asset, the dashboard will actually ask you, well, which one do you want to apply it to? So I have 3 versions of Typographic for different stylistic treatments. I'm just going to apply this version to Typographic 2. The other thing is I've already filled out my text. I entered in the next flight for my first line of text, and then fight for the second line. What's great is as long as you have those 2 lines of text, your text will become absorbed in the next preset that you decide to work with. Some of these text presets, which animate on screen, come with backgrounds. And in this case, I don't need to enable a background, so I'll turn it off. And then you actually have this blend with original. If you place it directly on a clip, there are different blending modes or styles that you can use instead of normal if you wanted to, let's say, blend it into the clip. So Harry mentioned the animation parts of typographic, but what I truly love about it is the fact that it allows you to animate without keyframes. So all you're doing is adjusting properties inside the effect, and in many cases, no keyframes are involved. So if we take a look at this animation, there's some tracking changes, there's some opacity changes, and then you have the 2 shapes which are just sort of fading in terms of their opacity. Right now, this animation in typographic starts right at the beginning of the clip, but I do have control over this intro start value, which allows me to let's say, start this 2 seconds later. So now this title won't pop up until the 2-second mark. And based on this duration value is how long it's going to last inside my actual composition. The other thing that's disabled right now is the outro animation. So I'm going to trigger that on as well. I'm going to have it start at 5 seconds in my composition. So just these slight adjustments to a preset allow you to customize that animation and its timing, again, without having to deal with all of the keyframes. Now, the properties involved in this animation are position changes, tracking changes, and opacity. You can see that they're checked over here. And if I go to text 1, which is the next in this instance, and I twirl down the animation values, we can see here that there's a position Y change taking place. There's the tracking and there's the opacity change. Now, there is no position Y movement in the next text. It's just that tracking and opacity. So someone altered this but didn't activate the position Y animate. And if I do that, now that animate Y is involved in the process by a percentage value of how much it moves from one part of the screen to the other. If you enter a negative value instead, like -20, it's going to move from down to up instead, or it should, at the 2-second mark where I identified it in the timeline. The other thing I want to draw your attention to with the text in particular is that there's a slight offset between the and the fight coming in, but they're animating in the exact same way. If I twirl up the text 1 settings and we go here to text 2, it's using text 1's values to animate it on screen. If I just expand my effect controls here, you'll see that there's an animation delay, which is usually how you would animate several items that are part of your lower third or your main title. You might decide to want to have them animate one after the other. So what I'll do is just add even more of a delay of 0.5. And I know that this starts at the 2-second mark, but now I can see one text element falls right around there, and then the 0.5-second delay for the fight text. Now I'm going to twirl down after the 2 text items, the shape area here. And this paint stroke is actually from a dedicated shape library that ships with Typographic. So you have these preset shapes, which are in other text tools within Universe, very simple shapes. So your rectangle, circle, star, and then there's this shape library. This shape library, once you select it, is available under these Shape 1 custom settings. And if I go here and choose a shape, you can see all of these preset icons that ship with Typographic. Now, if you're working in After Effects, you're not just limited to these preset shapes that are in the library. You can actually reference a layer or shape layer that exists inside your composition to be part of your typographic. So here I'll just select a different watercolor. We'll see that that updates. And because this S1 link XY dimensions is checked, it basically allows me to scale the width and height simultaneously of that item. And if I need to change up this animation in any way, I could go to the shape 1 animation values because there's really just a opacity change taking place right now. But I'm going to add a bit of a rotation change, quite an aggressive one of 64%. And I'll head back up to the main animation settings of Typographic, and then just click on that rotation button. And we should see that after this 2 seconds happens, we've got some rotation there of our first shape. And if I wanted the second shape, twirl up shape 1 and go to shape 2, we can see here the shape 2 animation values. And I will delay this even further, the animation delay for that shape, and then also just add some rotation of its own. That's way too much. I think I made it 3 seconds long. I don't think anyone's going to wait that long for the second shape in any type of project. So I'll make that a 0.3 second animation. And everything is somewhat linked together with this typographic, with its movement, by simply activating checkboxes at the very top of typographic, and then making altercations to it or making changes to it. Okay, so there's that typographic. And let me just explain the way that I'm working inside of Frame.io. So for those of you who haven't used Frame.io, it is primarily known as a review-based software extension that you can have in both After Effects and Premiere Pro. And you can use it for free if you are collaborating with someone and someone else has an account, and there's a certain amount of space that you get to use right when you start. Now, with Premiere Pro and After Effects, you can basically install it as an extension on your system by heading to Adobe's Exchange. And here is that Frame.io extension that's available to basically place inside of Premiere Pro and After Effects. And in fact, Jason, you're using Frame.io and Premiere, if I'm correct, to share, basically work with me in my project, but I'm the owner of that actual project inside of Frame.io.
Yes, that's right. I can see everything you share with me.
So you can see everything that that I'm sharing with you, which is great. And I'm doing a few things here with my workflow because I know that I'm going to be making several changes to this typographic, because I know that you're going to have some changes for me, Jason. So one thing that I do as I start to work and make these type graphics is I'm basically going to the File menu in After Effects here and using an increment and save workflow. So anytime that I make a change that I think is worthwhile, I'm choosing increment and save, and then my project gets automatically updated to that version. So now I'm on Share 5. The great part about doing this is that I can continue to upload also projects to Frame.io. So I'm going to upload my project file in this case. And we'll see here that this gets added. And just bear with me 1 second. I got to kick out my dog. Of course, he's interrupting me in the middle of this flow. 1 second.
It's interesting. I'll just pick up while Nick's sorting his dog out. As you can see, his screen updating at 37%. I can see pretty much the same thing in my Premiere panel. So it's pretty much looking exactly real time. So I can see it coming in to my system. So as soon as it's 100%, I can access what Nick sent me.
I have to tell you, Jason, my dog is very rude. He's not expecting your time, and I apologize, guys. Okay, so here's that AEP file. So it's Typographic Share 5. And I think it will be easier for you, Jason, if rather than see, these different versions, so that you know that they're all from the same project, that you basically see them as a stack. So I'm just going to drag this new incremented version of my After Effects project file over the existing other share projects that I've saved. And in fact, if I double click it from here, you're not going to see a preview of these files because it's just literally the empty AEP file without its assets, and nothing is contained inside. But I can see the multiple versions that I've been working on with my AEP project. Now, in terms of compositions, I can also save updates to my compositions. And what I'm doing in this particular case is actually making a duplicate copy every single time that I make a typographic change. And then when I'm ready with the change that I've made, so here's typographic version 3, I can go here to the upload button and then choose to upload that active comp. Now this is going to actually bake the file, so it's not just like a container of data. It's going to choose one of several preset formats. So you can choose the lossless format, one of these DV QuickTime formats, or a current preview, which are all different quality settings. You can also choose your settings here, as well as the range of what you'd like to upload. So the work area defined by those bars, or the whole composition. And then I can choose also, while it's going to be uploading this to Frame.io, a rendered version of the composition, I can choose where to save that rendered version on my system as well. So an external drive or whatever folder I would like to place it in. Now, the great news is once this version is uploaded, in fact, I have multiple versions here. I have 3 typographic versions that I've uploaded to Frame.io. I can see here by the 3 icon. And this functionality is only available in the web browser, but it's pretty cool when you start to do versioning. Right now, Jason, as you can see, I've got version 1 of an earlier title on my left, and then version 2 of another title using an actual custom graphic on my right. And I can switch actually between versions here to decide which graphic I'd like to work with, and then just play the different timing here that we see of how they come in and make comments. And in fact, Jason, you can make comments right now, and this is going to get picked up inside of After Effects. I'll be able to see those changes. Now, Jason, you're fairly new to Frame.io, right? What do you use for your versioning process?
Well, most of my clients actually, we still use WeTransfer quite a lot, and then some of the clients have their own sort of space, like Media Shuttle is one, where we use a space to swap quite a large amount of files. Like quite often I'll download 100 gigabytes of files and edit stories and send them back. So since we've got the huge storage space for transporting loads of rushes, we just sort of upload small viewing files to that. But I'm quite impressed with Frame.io, but obviously it's considerably more expensive if you've got a lot of people sharing.
Yes.
But yeah, it's pretty cool. I've just actually shared a little bit of feedback onto version 3.
Oh, you shared some feedback. Okay, let me go in here, and then I can see here Jason's comment. He actually took a paintbrush and he annotated this, and I can see that here. In fact, I can reply to him. I can also just give him a thumbs up. This also syncs to a mobile app, which is pretty cool as well. I've done several reviews of different tutorials online simply using that mobile app and having the flexibility to watch projects that way too. But here with Typographic and doing versioning, tracking of increment and save with the After Effects projects, not to mention Typographic, this allows me to continue to work and also keep everyone on the same page. So I know that Jason knows that the status of this project is still in progress. And then as soon as I get to the point where I upload a new version, I'll tag this as needs review. Once he approves that, we can then move on to, let's say, the next typographic. Now, if I take a look at the actual Frame.io project that we have here you can see these files. So there's the AEP file and the hacker text that we've uploaded, but you can have other assets come up here as well. So I can actually save if I look at the actual projects, here are some different projects that I've worked on. But as we continue to share and work with multiple projects, I can see these uploads. I can see the changes that have been made. This was just an earlier version of the project. And even share with Jason the RGX file. So this is the typographic preset. And he could check this out on a different system as well. So that is how I usually deal with client feedback, as well as just manage some collaborative workflows with versioning inside of After Effects and using Universe tools. You work with text in a very different way, Jason, sometimes, right? You do a lot of MOGRT workflows, if I'm correct.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, let me pass over the baton to you, because I think you have something to show, don't you?
I do indeed.
There we go. Okay.
Cool. So I think you can see my screen. So interesting here, I'm still in Premiere and you can see my frame IO, and here's the RGX file that Nick just sent to me. So it's quite cool. You can see what he was saying, the in progress 3, and I can click on those and play them. You can see here's my last feedback. You can easily add all kinds of things to it, color in, draw arrows, write stuff, and send that back. So that's quite cool. I was just going to answer a quick question that I'm just looking to see. Someone asked before, I can't remember who it was who asked, but about the type, which one was it? Type on, whether you can have multiple lines. And the answer is yes, you can have multiple lines. I've just added a few lines to this. And you can see with my keyframing, I've just added a keyframe in. So there's a pause where the cursor keeps working, and then it types on line 2. And then there's another pause, and it types on line 3. So a lot of the tools are very flexible, and you can sort of really tweak the way they work and the way they look. Anyway, I was going to show, I'm going to jump into After Effects now, and here's a little example that I'll just show you the end result, but then we'll build it up so you can see my workflow. So this is sort of taking advantage of the universe tools, and in After Effects you can see we've got a currency value coming up, and it's kind of 3D and cool looking. So I'll see if I can whack that together quite quickly to show you the process. So if I start by, I'll just create a new sequence. And unfortunately, I'm having a lot of problems with After Effects lately. And it looks like it's going to do it now. Yeah, I'm afraid, I don't know if you've got something to show, Nick. I'm going to have to restart After Effects, which won't take too long, but as you can see, it's not responding. I don't know whether I've got a buggy version. Let's see, it'll only take a second to restart. Basically, my plan here is you can do a lot of this in Premiere, but I was going to add a trick I do with sliders that allows you to animate. Oh, here we go, we're back, so I could just build it from scratch.
You don't even need me.
No,
You're on
quite
this.
big. All right, so let's see if this works now. Build a new comp. Oh, you've got to be joking, it's not going to do it again. I do really complicated graphics. I've been working on my computer all day and it's fine. All I want to do is make a new composition and it crashes, which is good to see that computers crash for everybody. So I'll try that again. Maybe I'll just start with a whole new project. Third time lucky. All right, so let's start from scratch. If I make a new composition this way, hopefully this will work. There we go. We have a new composition. So the first thing I want to do is we'll make a solid. I'll just make it black because I can. Makes me a bit nervous. This is incredibly non-responsive. Really slow. Anyway. So if we use numbers, this is the way I get to all my tools. You can obviously do this with the dashboard as we showed before, but I tend to always find effects this way and then I just drag it on. But this isn't looking very good. Yeah, Nick, I don't know if you were going to do a quick demo of Quantum. I'm just going to need to restart, I think, because this is not working for me at all.
No problem. Give me, I'm just loading up a composition as you check.
Okay, it's all right for a second. Let's see if we can get on.
Okay.
One more step. So we got numbers going. So let's go and make it, use impact just for it because it's big and obvious. Let's make it really big, 200. So there's our number. And now I want numbers. We're going to come into text settings and numbers. So let's make it dollars. So the dollar signs beforehand. I'll move it over there a little bit. So now the first trick I do is I use sliders to animate things. So what I'm going to do is onto this layer, I'm going to add a couple of sliders. So if I type in sliders, or slider here. So I get slider control. We'll apply that. I'll just shrink this down, and then I'll duplicate the slider control because of another trick. So what I'm going to do is use the first one and make it a value, and the second one I use to cheat the animation. So the first one, let's just type in 123 so it has a number. What I want to do is I'm going to set this value to use whatever I've set in the value slider. So if I hold down Option and hit the stopwatch button, it opens my expression controls. And then rather than type an expression, I'm just going to pick whip to this slider, and that gives us the number. And now you can see whatever I put into this slider, it allows us to enter a number instantly. So 254, and it's done. But now the trick here is I want this to count up from 0, but I want people to be able to enter whatever number they want. So this is my little trick, is I set keyframes on an animation slider. So if we just turn on the keyframe here, and then we'll go forward to say 2 seconds, and we'll make it 1. So now nothing's happening at the moment, but what I'm going to do is in this expression here, where I've said to take the value from there, I'm going to make that a variable. So I'll just call it A, and this just saves me typing out everything over and over again. And put a colon, and then I'll make B a second variable, and I'll pick whip to my animation controller. So now I've got 2 variables. The first one, A, is the value that the user enters. The second one is the animation controller. So if I do A times B, anyone who's good at maths will know at the first keyframe, which if we look at our keyframes here, we've got whatever that number is multiplied by 0, which obviously has to be 0. And as we animate through to that value, it's whatever the value is multiplied by 1, and that gives us a counting up animation. Incredibly quick, and it's nice and smooth and accurate. So I'm just going to save. I'll just put it on my desktop for speed. Money counter, just in case we crash. So there's our number counting up, which is quite easy. Now to make it look a bit cooler, I'm going to add a luster on it from Universe Toolkit. And this is pretty cool because it just instantly makes it look 3D and kind of cool. We've got a load of presets that we can choose. So because it's money, let's go with a gold look. So there you go. And as you can see, I can try out a load of different looks. That looks quite cool. And then of course, you've got a load of control where you can come in and tweak them. But for this demo, we won't bother. Now, the only other thing is I think I want the numbers to be bigger. So we'll just come back into here, and I'll make the font size, make it really big, move it over there, move it down a bit. So that looks cool. And you can see that still will key. So now the next step is, so we've built our little animation so it counts up from 0 to a user operated value. So now the next step is to make a MOGRT, or a motion graphic template. So for that, we use the Essential Graphics panel, which you can find up in Window, Essential Graphics panel. And the first thing you have to do is select a composition. This project's quite simple because I've only got one, which normally I would name it, but due to my slow beginning, we haven't bothered. So if we choose comp 1, there's a really cool thing that if you've got the comp loaded in your timeline, as we do, you can hit solo supported properties, and it opens up, expands every possible controller that you've got that we have access to. So a couple of things. First thing I'm going to do, if I name it up here, and we'll call it money counter, which can be whatever you want. This primer is whatever the comp's called. So if I call that money counter comp, you can see that's updated here, but we're going to call the actual final project money counter. Now, for the fact we can put in a load of controls, but what I care about is I'm going to put in our first slider for value and rename it value. Now there's a trick here that by default it's only 0 to 100, and you can see we've already got 254. So if I hit edit range, it allows me to enter in numbers. So we're not going to allow negative numbers, but we might allow up to $2,000 in this case. And there you'll see it interactively updates our number. And then the only other thing, because it's fun, we'll put in a couple of colors. So you can see all I'm doing is dragging them from the timeline, dropping them in there. And that will do. And you can see these will instantly change our colors, as you can see there, which I'll undo because that's a bit messy. So that's all there is to making a simple MOGRT file. Obviously, we can put in motion, like all kinds of things. You could change, put position sliders in. Basically, anything you see that comes up in this list could be added into the controls here. But for the sake of this demo, so that's the main thing. So all we need to do now is export motion graphics template. It forces you to save it. It has a little bit of think and then asks where you want to put it. In this case, I'll just agree with the local templates folder, but you can put it wherever you want. We won't worry too much about that. So now if I go into Premiere, so the nice thing is with that motion graphics template, I could hand that over to anyone. Just open Premiere up again. I'll just stick it on the end of this one for argument's sake. So if I open my essential graphics panel in Premiere, which is over here, I will just type in money, and there you can see our little money counter. So if I drag that into my timeline, it loads it into the project. You can see I've got a folder for motion graphics template media. It's having a little bit of a think. Let's hope this isn't, there you go. It looks like it's working. So there's our number. And now instantly you can see that animates as you'd expect, but in our essential graphics control, we can type in whatever number we want. So let's go, if I can select it, 326. And that will now animate up to 326 for us perfectly. And again, we can sort of change colors. So we've got complete control over whatever we want to allow control. I actually use these quite a lot. It's brilliant if you're working on a project with editors who aren't confident with graphics. They can sort of access, you can see I've changed that, customize the number. You can also use the slider to change the value.
Jason?
Yes.
Quick question from TJ. And he was curious about if the counter takes into account variable width fonts, so it keeps the text from shifting.
It would if you were using a monospaced font.
Okay.
So in this case, I've used a normal font, so the sort of maths involved in the letters. Let's have a look. This won't, one thing to be aware of with a motion graphic template is now that we've built it, anything we go and do to change things, it won't automatically update. But for example, if we come in here, I don't know of a monospace font. I don't actually use them that often because I don't worry too much about that. Oh, here we go, mono, let's use that one. So that's a bit too big. So if we make it smaller, so now that we're using a monospace font, the numbers will stay exactly where they were, except for the decimal place changes. But if we went to a lower number, we set that to $99, you can see everything will stay exactly where it is, except the decimal place still. But essentially, the point that you're asking is like the width of the numbers hold their correct width. But again, be aware that I've changed the font in here. Even if I save this file, this motion graphic template is a standalone thing and has nothing to do with the project in After Effects. If you want to make an adjustment like that, I physically have to come in here, and for the sake of not going over it, I'll save it as a version 2, and you have to recreate the motion graphic template, which is a little bit annoying, that there's not a way to just sort of simply update it. But then in Premiere, you can see if we come back to our browse window, we've now got both options. So we have our monospace money counter there.
There was actually another question here about just MOGRTs in general, about being able to retime the animation using the template in Premiere Pro.
That's quite tricky. I don't know of a way to control the position of keyframes. The one thing you can do is if I just hit U so we can see that's our only animation. What we can do is, let's say, make it a second, so it happens in a second, or let's say it goes from 1 second to 2 seconds. There is a trick which is in a fairly recent version, and now I'm not going to remember where it is. There's a way we can sort of set it up. You know this thing I'm talking about, Nick? I can't find it for the life of me.
What, oh,
Oh,
you're
here we
looking
go.
for, yeah,
Response time.
yeah. So responsive design, got it.
So if we
But
do
that,
responsive design, well, that will sort of preserve. So you can see this bit here. That will preserve that. So say, for example, if we had it count on, let's do at the 4-second mark. I'm going to copy that keyframe and copy that keyframe at the 5-second mark. So you can see now it counts up to 99 or whatever our value is, sits there for 2 seconds, and then counts off. If we do that response time, that will take, it'll freeze that, but that will lock it so you can't change that, if that makes sense.
so
But
just to, oh, sorry, just to add to this a little bit, Jason, a few things. There are a few ways that you could sort of maybe come up with renditions of the same title, all with different timing, and then give your user access to this. This is the most simplistic way to a drop-down menu. So the idea is, picture if Jason took this number counter, you duplicated that file 3 times in your actual composition, and under the expression controls, there's now a drop-down. And by linking things through some very simple expressions, Jason can give a user let's say the control between a 1 second, 2 second, and 3 second animation. I've seen earlier MOGRTs, just to add to this topic, where though through a lot of expression controls, someone take a slider in order to be able to control the timing of the motion graphic somewhat, but I think it was the overall motion graphic. And while this is beyond my level of expertise when it comes to expression controls, I did want to share a resource with everybody. And it's actually done from a fellow colleague of mine by the name of Yarle, who teamed up with Adobe to make a book called Making MOGRTs. It's a free PDF that's over 80 pages. And you can get it from his website, which is premierepro.net. Now I'll make sure to send this in the link right now, but there might be some pieces of code that you can copy in the making of your MOGRT. My last thing here is, I know that Adobe, they seem to be heavily invested in motion graphic templates. In fact, the latest release of After Effects, which was a week ago, now includes being able to do video screen replacement with your motion graphic template. And I would see this as things that might be coming up potentially in the future, or a request that you can make to Adobe on those lines of making this process more user-friendly, if that's helpful to you.
I'm just doing the idea that you said while you were talking.
Oh, gotcha.
Basically, I've done it quite quickly without explaining, but I've basically done what Nick suggested. So I've copied my sequence. I've set the keyframes, so I've got a 1 second version, which takes a second to animate, a 2 second version, which takes 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds. I've then made a control layer. I've used a drop-down menu control, which I've edited to make it, say, 1 second, 2 seconds, and 3 seconds. And then on these 3 versions, I've set an opacity expression, which basically it pulls up the variable, which is the control output of that menu. Basically, the menu control, it's got 3 options, so they're going to give you an output of 1, 2, and 3. So I'm basically saying, if that menu is set to 1, make this layer 100%, otherwise make the opacity 0. And then I've done the same here. So I'm saying on the 2 second version, if it says number 2, make it 100, otherwise 0. So if I save that, come into the essential graphics, show support things, and we'll put that in here. And then I can say animation speed, save that as, I don't remember what version we're up to. Let's go version 4, make that a motion graphics template. And now if we come to Premiere, you'll see, look at that, we never had a version 3. But now when I pull version 4, we now have in our edit, if I select the right one, we now have the speed controller. So it's kind of hard to see, but if we mark an in point there, you can see at that point, that's the second. If I make it 2 seconds, you can see it's not quite animated, and 3 seconds, it's even less. So there's a quick way to control the animation speed. I don't think there's really an easy way to move a keyframe around, but using these tricks and responsive design time tricks, you can actually solve that problem for that question you asked.
I can actually share one more resource too, Jason.
Would you like the
Just
screen?
regarding this. Yes, I'm going to take over the screen for a second, just on MOGRTs, which I find helpful if you're trying to learn expressions or learn how people set these up. So if you head to Adobe Stock and you have an Adobe account, you should know that, I'll just step back here a step. You head to the main page, Adobe Stock. And then when we go onto the new page and go to templates, there's a category for motion graphics. And while some of these are paid for templates, the trick to finding free ones is to do a search under price for standard content. All of these standard content templates are free, and they even have some on the new media replacement feature inside of Premiere Pro and After Effects. In fact, if you go here and license the item, as long as you're logged in, it's either going to save it to one of your libraries, which are your online folders, or alternatively, you could have it saved directly to your system. But having it or this item in a library, you're able to then access this inside of Premiere Pro. Now, there's another level to this, which is that essentially you can open these templates while meant to work inside of Premiere Pro. You can extract them inside of After Effects. Now, the trick is if you go to the template after it's downloaded and try to double click it, if you've saved it to your drive, it won't open in After Effects. The trick is to launch After Effects. And then once you do, you can choose to open the project. Once you do, it's in that dialog box, it actually says, gives you an option to extract that template. And if you extract it, you can see the actual coding that someone used on these free templates to get a sense if they had a slider for timing or whatever other feature that you wanted to do. But just to note that all those templates on there on Adobe are for free. So something that you could look into as well in terms of MOGRT resources. Awesome, Jay. Glad you're liking this. And we're at 12:57. I did want to make one more kind of conclusion message, and this is less along the lines of text. But when we talk about text, sometimes I'll use generators when I just have text on a solid background. And of course, After Effects has some incredible gradients and fractal noise that you can mix for the backgrounds of your text. But I do like to mention the universe generators as a background source or even an overlay source on top of your video clips. Now, there's one effect, and I might have mentioned this in week 1, called Spectralicious. And when you see it for the first time, it's this rainbow colored pattern. But when you start to look at its presets, it becomes a lot more interesting. And what's great about Spectralicious, if you throw it directly on a source, under blend modes, you can choose something like overlay and then mix it into the footage that you have over top, or let's say a text source. The other thing is you'll see something such as a soft gradient pattern. And my gut instinct when I first saw this, like soft gradient background, was to ignore this because I know that there exists one in both Premiere Pro and After Effects. But what makes this fascinating to me is the fact that this is not just a gradient, but it's a gradient with a texture. So you have up to 6 textures that are mixed into the gradient, along with a gradient and fractal noise. So to me, when building a background where you want to have these organic patterns rather than adding 3 effects, you've got fractal noise, a color map, texturing, and vignetting all in one control. And think about how that might take, how long would that take to set up in After Effects? Well, it'd be simple. You would have to apply multiple effects, and having all of those parameters in one place to then mix also with text and other items, I think is incredibly useful. Cool. Jason, did you have anything to add in terms of MOGRTs or anything?
No, not so much MOGRTs. I think obviously we're running out of time. I was going to say there's lots of other tricks for text that I use. And it's not always using the obvious things. Maybe I could show this quickly for 2 minutes. Won't matter if we go a few minutes over, will it?
We're still ending earlier by webinar standards. So if you guys have time, I'm just sending that back over to you, Jason.
Cool. Sorry, I'm just nicking it as well. So. Have you got that screen up? Yeah. So a couple of examples, I was going to just show you some things I had set up. Like here's using the universe prism displacement, which is this one here. So while you look at that, it looks like a way of making ripples through water. This is quite an extreme and fairly ugly example, but it just shows that you can do things where I've just applied it to text, and you can see it's kind of quite a trippy thing. Not only that, but you can see I've used hacker text, so the text is moving around and kind of looks like glass. I suppose the point of this is more to show that it's not always the obvious answer. So for example, this is using screen text in the background and hacker text on top, as well as using Shine just to add another layer, which are all sort of red giant tools. So 3 different tools used to make a very quick graphic out of nothing. Likewise, tools like Heatwave, by adding this fire onto it, and you can see the heatwave effect is rippling the text as if you're looking through the heat haze at the text. So quite often you can do some really cool things with text, not as you would necessarily expect. Again, this is that same hacker text where I've added the Ecto tool, which you can see here, which gives like a sort of Ghostbusters-esque edge to the text. So I think quite often coming up with unique things, it can be sort of thinking outside the box. And likewise, chromatic aberration to bend text and sort of add colored layers. So that's just a simple layer of text. If I were to turn off that, you can see it's just text. And by adding it onto the text, it creates a cool look. And then obviously you could see here I've keyframed it. So as you move through, you can see it actually creates some life to the text, whereas the white text isn't moving, but because I've moved the position of the center of the chromatic aberration, it creates some sort of nice movement. And then one final little example I've got is a ray gun, which we've looked at before, which is in our generators. No, it's not. Motion graphics. It's a way of making sort of all kinds of different funky backgrounds, as well as all these circles and squares and fun shapes. You can actually use text, and you can make the text animate in scale, and you can see there I'm actually feeding it with my hacker text yet again. So you can see I've built like quite an elaborate background. This is quite ugly because it was obviously built as an example, but just to sort of make you realize that sometimes you can get some cool stuff with text from a tool that, like looking at the example, has nothing to do with text. But it's a brilliant way of sort of quite organically, randomly rotated, randomly scaled, randomly colored text. Like to build that would take quite a bit of time, but with a ray gun, I've just been able to build that really quickly, and you can see it's quite cool. And the fact that it's using the hacker text to feed the text shapes. So using these tools in a combination effect can also do some pretty cool things. So that's sort of racing through a few other examples, because obviously you've got the text tools, which are pretty obvious, but loads of these other tools give you really cool ways of utilizing text and adding extra dimensions to your work.
Jason, Cameron actually had a question just regarding kerning. He was wondering if you could customize a kerning when Red Giant is referencing the item as source text.
To animate the kerning, or let me see if I suppose it depends on the element. I'm pretty sure if we come into here, just trying to think where I've got this text.
Actually, he was referring to your heat wave example where the WAV were farly fair away from each other. And if that was controlled by the effect source text and not animatable via the text tool, can you kern those letters closer together?
Yes, you would, because this is just using text. So you could actually make that multiple layers and you could do whatever you want with it. So it's using the standard Premiere text tools in this case. So this
Oh,
is
cool.
again where, yeah, so you could do anything you want. That could be a Photoshop file. So where that kerning is ugly, it's good you spot that, because most people don't care about kerning and it drives me mad. In fact, it's a little embarrassing that that's in my demo, but I guess this is a good demo of how to make things look good from a kerning perspective, but more what you can do with it. So yes, a bad example. Cool. Do you have any other screens to show, Nick?
Yes, I just have some conclusion screens for everybody just to kind of go over the resources that we're sharing. And again, thanks so much for spending either your morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. And don't forget about your free t-shirt on the Maxon merchandise store. Right. And we got several other events. We have one more on collaboration with Universe Part 5 next Monday. We're going to be joined back with Max and Harry Frank. So summing up creative collaboration, and you can check out what we'll be covering very shortly. With that said, this recording is going to be available for you on the Maxon training team page on YouTube. And I did want to point out to one of the resources that I gave in terms of the book on making MOGRTs, or that free ebook from Yarley here. It's available on Adobe, but this is his premierepro.net site. And it's just a great 100-page document that you can check out, which covers to all your heart's content about MOGRTs and making them. So hopefully that's a great resource for you guys. I hope you enjoyed our session, and we're excited to, let me turn on my camera. And we're excited to see you guys next week.
Cool. Yeah. See you all next week.
All right. Bye, everybody.
See you later.
Take care.